Hey everyone, welcome to week 2 of SCI-FI September. Today we are looking at the Broken Earth trilogy by the amazing N.K. Jemisin. I'm excited to talk about this trilogy for a couple of reasons. First of all, this is the smallest number of books I've ever covered in one video. This should mean there's hardly any work for me to do this week, and it'll be a very short video.
27 minutes? How?
Second reason, this is a fantastic series on so many levels. There's brilliant world building and an original concept, some extremely clever writing styles and writing techniques, and a story that is incredibly ambitious. Not to mention, Ms. Jemisin worked as a psychologist for over 20 years before she wrote this trilogy, which means her character work is unbelievably sophisticated and nuanced. So there's so much just expert level writing here. But this is also a pretty dark trilogy. There is violence, heartbreak, tragedy, atrocities, and multiple extinction level events. So it can be pretty bleak at times. As much as I love this series, I don't recommend it to everyone for that reason. So as usual, in this video, I am going to lay out the facts for you. I'm going to be objective, unbiased, spoiler-free, and help you decide if you want to read this trilogy for yourself. The Broken Earth trilogy takes place after a massive apocalypse in the distant past caused the collapse of civilization. The world is now plagued with natural disasters at an extinction level, like earthquakes, tsunamis, supervolcanoes, all causing toxic ash clouds, widespread famine, and even years of darkness. Every few centuries, the world will enter a fifth season, a period of mass chaos and death. This world has people called orogenes. They can control seismic energy known as orogeny. They take the movements within the Earth's crust or the heat from the air around them and redirect that energy. The strongest of them can literally move mountains. Orogenes get trained at the great school called the Fulcrum. There they learn to protect the Earth. They use their power to prevent earthquakes and stop volcanoes before they can erupt, and work around the clock to essentially prevent another fifth season event. They are the reason why catastrophe only occurs every century or two. Yet despite this, the Orogenes are widely blamed for the breaking of the Earth. Sometimes called rogues as a derogatory slur, they are often killed on sight by normal people who treat them with extreme fear and prejudice. It doesn't help that the Orogenes can suck the heat from a person's body and flash freeze them, and then redirect that heat to annihilate an entire city. Our story starts with Essen, a mother Orogeny in hiding, who comes home one day to find her son is dead. It seems her husband Jija found out that their two children were rogues, so he literally murdered his own son immediately, and then kidnapped his daughter. Essen sinks into a catatonic state of grief for 2 days, and when she wakes from it, she has one thought on her mind: to kill him and save her.
Oh, chills. Literal chills.
Number 5 killed my brother.
Oh my god, I forgot about that part.
Before I go on, I must confess, I'm a little bit stumped as to what topic to talk about first. There are so many good things about this series, and they're all trying to get through my brain at the same time. So I'm just gonna pick my favorite parts, which means, of course, God, I'm such a nerd. So I've outlined the world building a bit earlier regarding the natural disasters, the Orogenes, and the school that trains them. And honestly, I'm not going to go into too much more detail than that, because I don't want to spoil anything. But there are two really cool things going on with the world building here, and the first is the mystery. The trilogy is literally called The Broken Earth. So right from the title itself, we have our first big question. What the hell happened here? This is literally my favorite type of mystery plot, when the fantasy world itself is the mystery. When the question is, how did everything get this way? Who are these magic beings and where did they come from? Why do things work the way they do? In the same sense, it's very similar to Brandon Sanderson's first Mistborn trilogy. You might remember that story. That's the one where the Dark Lord won and has been reigning for 1,000 years and has complete control over all magic. In the same way, in both of these trilogies, you wonder what happened in the past to explain how the world became the way it is. The best thing about the whole mystery world plotline is that it takes incredible planning by the author to execute it. It means there are clues all the way back from the opening chapter. Every new fantastical thing has been pre-thought out to fit this unique puzzle, and that way when the final pieces fall into place at the end of the trilogy, you see how it was all hinted at from book one. It's an incredibly difficult story to achieve. I know both N.K. Jemisin and Sanderson had to pre-plan their whole trilogy and write it in a very short amount of time, and work very hard to maintain continuity. But as a reader, it is unbelievably satisfying to get to the end of the trilogy and realize that it was all one giant, complex puzzle that fits together so perfectly. So yes, everything you see in the Broken Earth trilogy happens for a reason. There is a mind-blowing level of forethought and planning that goes into the story and the world building. Prepare for some big revelations.
Wait, did you just gasp at my gasp? Sorry, your gasp was so good.
The second cool thing going on with the world building here is the blending of genres. So Broken Earth is essentially a post-apocalyptic story.
It's an oversimplification of events, but yeah.
And post-apocalyptic stories can blend many traits from both fantasy and sci-fi. In fact, I would say that the Broken Earth trilogy is a perfect split down the middle, 50-50 sci-fi and fantasy. Though you can bet your ass it was getting included in SCI-FI September. Thank you very much. You see, I love stories that blend genre. I think genre too often is limiting to a story. I love when a fantasy story introduces a crime and mystery element, or when a sci-fi story takes a sharp turn towards horror.
Did I say this was a love story? No, it's a horror movie.
I love the movie Interstellar because at its heart it is a drama piece about a father and a daughter. Through the lens of a fantastical setting, we see human emotion displayed on a level rarely seen. And my god, that scene with the messages from home. Oh.
Oh, Grandpa died last week. We buried him out in the back 40 next to Mom and Jesse.
Only in sci-fi do you get something that deep. I would argue that science fiction is at its strongest when it is partially blended with another genre, a sort of alloy of genre, if you will. Now, in Broken Earth, the science fiction is blended with fantasy. And here's the thing, sci-fi and fantasy blend together pretty well. They're already quite similar. They follow a lot of the same story rules as each other. And yes, just a quick tangent here.
Liar!
This will not be over quickly.
There are only two real big differences between sci-fi and fantasy. One is the setting, and the other is the magic. I would argue that everything else is more or less the same in terms of story function. So for setting, sci-fi is always set in space or future or a galaxy far, far away, basically in places humans haven't been to yet. Whereas fantasy is set on Earth, in the past, or in other worlds, etc. The difference between the two is really just what type of set gets built for the movie, what kind of picture is put behind the green screen, or the details of the characters' daily lives. The other big difference being the magic, because in sci-fi, the technology is the magic. Like that quote, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. But you can also look at Sanderson's 3 laws of magic and apply them to technology, and they fit just as well. You see, a spaceship and a magic spell fulfill the same function in a story. Now, I've barely scratched the surface of comparing sci-fi and fantasy.
Oversimplification.
It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on the two below.
That literally went on forever. I thought you were never going to stop talking.
Getting back to the Broken Earth, the blending of the genres means that the setting can deviate between a sci-fi and fantasy locations, so you can have a desert wilderness or a highly sophisticated facility. It can also mean that there is technology and magic at the same time, and they can almost work like 2 separate magic systems that work in conjunction to each other. Now, moving on. People go nuts over this detail, and rightfully so. It's pretty cool. There is a big portion of this trilogy that is written in second-person mode. And if you're not sure what that means, the main character is referred to as you. The narrator of the story is speaking to Essen and calling her you. So instead of a text saying Essen did this and did that, or like in first-person mode where you say, I did this, I did that, it's you did this, you did that.
Who are you?
You.
No, not me, you.
Yes, I am you.
Are you deaf?
No, you is blind.
I'm not blind, you blind.
It can be a little disorientating at first, but you get the hang of it pretty quickly. It's genuinely brilliant writing. Remember, when we meet our main character, Essen, she has just found the dead body of her murdered child. It's a brutal moment, N.K. Jemisin said that when she was writing Essen's second-person mode, it was all about having Essen be a degree removed from the story. It was done to show that she was in a state of disassociating as a way to cope with the grief, so like she was outside of her own mind. It's a brilliant way to show deep character work and to depict the psychological impact of that scene. Now, everyone talks about the second-person mode, but there's a bit more going on here with writing techniques as well. The text is also in present tense. Another unusual choice. So where most books describe things in the past, so a sentence like, he ran up the steps, drew his sword, and attacked the enemy. This story uses present tense, so he runs up the steps, draws his sword, and attacks the enemy. This actually adds a great deal of urgency to every scene. Yet, the person mode and the present tense changes several times throughout the trilogy. So in book 1, it's still all in present tense, but Essun is the only one written as second person mode. The other two characters are written in third person mode, so we use their name a little bit more often. And later in the series we get a story mode from a person in first person mode, but also in past tense. It's still pretty easy to read. Don't worry. It probably sounds way more complicated than it actually is. The reason why this is special is that it shows that N.K. Jemisin has consistently shown an incredible level of command over text, language, and prose. Her writing demonstrates that she can master any technique, and do so in a way that isn't just showing off, but actually adding value to the story. Though if I can offer a word of advice to aspiring authors, probably don't experiment with this sort of stuff on your first novel. Just stick to first or third person mode in the past tense, like 99% of other books on the market. Experiment once you're a bit more practiced at the basics. You know how I said at the start that the story is incredibly ambitious? Well, put it this way, page 1 starts with the world ending. I'm not exaggerating, and I don't consider this a spoiler either. It's literally the opening sentence. Let's start with the end of the world, why don't we? Get it over with, and move on to more interesting things. An orogene of incredible power just cuts loose and splits a continent down the middle. This causes earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, oh my.
Lions? Tigers? Bears?
Oh my.
It literally triggers a 5th season, an extinction level event, and it's a hell of an opening to a book because we realize some lunatic has done this on purpose. Then we have the plotline of Essen, searching for her kidnapped daughter and traveling through this dangerous world that is currently reeling from a fresh disaster. Refugees are fleeing, and often marauding and thieving in a desperate quest for survival. But Essen only cares for finding her daughter. I actually really love this plotline. See, in a lot of post-apocalyptic stories, the goal is survival, but that's actually a really boring goal. Because in such a dangerous world, there's no finish line. You just keep trying to survive. That's why a lot of people stop watching The Walking Dead, because there's no finish line. It's just endless cliffhangers as they all try to keep surviving. But Jemisin dodges this problem by having the goal change. The goal is not Essun's survival, her goal is finding her daughter and saving her from a murderer. It's a much more achievable goal, so we care about it more. Brilliant. There are 2 other major plot lines for book 1 revolving around 2 other characters. Young Demaya has just discovered that she has the power of orogeny, and so she has been taken to the school of the Fulcrum to train. And also we have Sienite, who is a graduate of the Fulcrum who is traveling the land to prevent another 5th season. So both of these characters and plots look at the Institute of the Fulcrum from different angles. And as you will see, the Fulcrum is a bit of a complex organization with its own secrets. There are more plot lines going on further into the trilogy, but I'm not going to mention them. You've got enough at this point to get you interested. Moving on to characters, I did say at the start that Jemisin worked as a psychologist, and this really shows in the character writing here. Her characters go through all sorts of psychological episodes. I mean, the book starts with Essun going catatonic for several days as in a state of grief. The character work here really benefits from seeing real human behavior depicted with such accuracy. But it's also not just psychobabble techno jargon. You don't need a psychology degree to appreciate the technical accuracy. It will just feel so real on a gut level. I'd love to talk in depth about character work, but I want to avoid spoilers as well. So I'm just going to look at my 3 favourite characters, and that should give you an idea of the quality of character work we're dealing with here. First is Essen. So she's our main protagonist, and she's the one whose story is told to her in second-person mode. Now, she's a bit unusual for a protagonist. She's 42 years old, she has olive brown skin, and is described as being curvy, rounded, and even flabby at one point. So she's not your typical skinny teenage protagonist. Not that there's anything wrong with that, it's just that that is such the norm for protagonists. It's nice to see someone in the lead who's a little bit different to that. Now, Essen is usually calm and level-headed and a very smart woman. She's also incredibly jaded and hateful of the way that the world is and the way she's been treated for most of her life. She also has a ton of grief and pain in her life. There are times when all of her calm and wisdom is wiped away in a flash of pain, and she is filled with unbridled rage. This is where we see Jemisin's psychological insight really shine through. We see a character who has done their best to mature and to adjust to their past trauma, but then we see a hyper-realistic demonstration of PTSD and relapsing and just flipping out and having a good old-fashioned breakdown. Good stuff. Second character here is Alabaster. He's described as tall, dark black skin, and so lean that he's wiry. Alabaster is an Orogene ranked at 10 rings, which is the highest possible rank, and he's the only one currently ranked so. So Alabaster has been a lifelong servant of the Fulcrum, and he's their golden boy, but he's not exactly thrilled by that. Alabaster is snide, he's arrogant, and uses humor and sarcasm often. We start to realize that most of Alabaster's personality is a front he puts up intentionally, done to deflect away from his true feelings. I saw an interview with NK Jemisin where she said that she related most to Alabaster as a character, especially the deflecting through humor away from uncomfortable emotions, whereas I know nothing about that. Final character here is Nassin. So she's Essen's daughter. So her story starts where she witnesses her father murdering her brother. So there's a lot of damage going on in this child's mind. Her arc is so important. She is a child who is not allowed to be a child. She witnesses the very worst of humanity early on, and we see her react in a way that is very natural for a child. Nassin is emotional, volatile, but she also knows how to be cold and calculating. She knows how to change herself to be what she needs to be at any given moment in order to survive. Yet she may change into a person ruled by hatred and despair. Alright, this is a big one. I nearly put this segment at the start because it's just everywhere, but I didn't want to put people off. But you gotta know, this is a dark series. So the Orogenes are the frequent victims of hate crimes. I mean, the story literally starts with a child being murdered by its own father, just for being an Orogene. It's dark right from the start. And yet it gets worse. There is a lot of mistreatment of children, domestic violence, systematic abuse by an institution, and even pedophilia. There were sections even in the early books where they were so shockingly dark they made me a bit sick to my stomach. Jesus wept. A big theme of this trilogy is prejudice and persecution. So Jemisin shows how people have historically been treated when they are not seen as people, when their oppression is seen as a noble thing. It's bleak, but important to talk about. Another content warning is for the prejudice itself. So there is a confronting look at what it's like to be treated poorly just for being who and what you are. There are a ton of parallels between real-world minority groups. Sometimes it's hard to read a scene where someone just walks in the door and says hello and is immediately treated like shit. It's hard to watch, even more so because of the accuracy. And final content warning, there is a lot of death. And I mean, yeah, death of characters, but also mass death, catastrophes. This is a tragedy story. It's clear from the first sentence that it's a tragedy story, but there's still just a lot of heartache and a lot of feelings of hopelessness in the face of mass global disaster. I should add for context, there is still a lot of hope in this story and a lot of beauty in this story. So I don't want you to get the wrong impression that it's all grimdark, but it is just a lot of bleakness to take on. Okay, so there is tons of representation in this trilogy. For one, there are 6 point of view characters, and 5 of those are women. So this is a women's story about women. The Orogenes are very much a persecuted minority group, and we see exactly what that's like. Some Orogenes deal with violence and hate crimes, yet others just deal with passive-aggressive comments and snide remarks. And some, well, they deal with family members who love them, but then talk about the Orogenes as if it's a problem to be fixed.
Because this is just a phase.
We see a full spectrum of attacks that a minority group can face. A major aspect of the story is that we see what it does to a person to be constantly treated with fear and hatred. As people, we often respond to the way we're being treated. Not always, but as a general rule. This series shows how people can be bombarded with hatred all their lives, and eventually just become the monster that everyone expects them to be.
Are you afraid of me? Do you think I might go nuts?
Another thing I love about this is Jemisin is not trying to represent just one minority group. Now, yes, she has said in interviews that she drew on her own experiences as a woman of color in America, and that's very important too. But the descriptions in the story are so open-ended, it can very easily apply to any persecuted minority group from any given point in history. I love that. Because there's this weird tendency when a group is facing persecution for people to stand up and shout, but this group has it worse, as if prejudicial oppression was a competition. I like the open-endedness in this series because it strongly implies that prejudice itself is the problem, not who is facing more of it. There's some beautiful rep for trans people as well, and I love it so much I'm just going to explain it outright, sorry, but there's a scene where 2 women are bathing together and one woman notices that the other has a penis. She thinks to herself, that's surprising, and that's it. It's literally never mentioned again. Now, I personally think this is excellent, because at no point in the scenes before or the scenes after is this woman even hinted at being trans, because they're just a woman. The whole character arc isn't about them being trans either. They're not constantly interrupting the plot saying, hey, by the way, I'm trans.
This story's about me, not him.
They're allowed to be a person who contributes to the plot lines. It's not tokenism, it's normalizing. There is also some polyamory. Now, this is a topic that almost never shows up in fiction, and in case you're not sure, polyamory is defined as the practice of engaging in multiple romantic and typically sexual relationships with the consent of all the people involved. There's a plot line about 3 people falling in love with each other, forming a triad relationship, and even raising a child together. It's really quite beautiful. Also, once you see polyamory in a story, it will ruin every single love triangle you see after that. You'll see a story of a woman trying to choose between 2 guys, and you're just like, just be polyamorous. There's also LGBT crossover here. So, fun fact, a polyamorous triad can't work without one or more bisexual, or unless the triad is all one gender. Either way, there's a lot of LGBT rep that goes hand in hand with polyamory. Final bit of representation is in the author herself. So she does an amazing job of giving voice to people like her. And I want to acknowledge something here. So this today is my 17th video introducing a book series. Yay! However, it is my first introducing a series written by a non-Caucasian author. And it's only my 5th that's not about a male author. A few people have pointed this out to me quite rightly in the comments, saying that I talk about representation in the characters of the books, but I don't show representation in the author's eye cover. And part of the reason I am in the period where I'm working to grow my channel, so I'm doing all the popular series, and all the popular series tend to be by white men, which is a separate problem I'm not going into today. But I want to encourage you and myself at the same time. It's good to deliberately go looking for authors who are outside of your usual demographic. Not so we can be performative or self-congratulatory for how progressive we are.
We're not only proud of that, we're smug about it.
But so that we can deliberately encounter other people's ideas. I don't want to live in an echo chamber that's only sending me back my own ideas. Echo chambers can feel safe, but you're not learning there and you're not growing. So I want to read works by all sorts of authors that have different life experiences to my own, from different countries, different economic backgrounds, all sorts of things. Because that is half the beauty of reading. We get to live other people's lives and broaden our own experiences and enrich our own lives for it. Is the ending worth it? Yes. Mostly. So all three books won the Hugo Award, the first time in the awards history that it's been done all to every book in the trilogy. That said, I still believe book 3 to be the weakest of the three. It still offers a great conclusion to the story, but there are weaker parts to it. So real world context, Jemisin was caring for her mother while writing this trilogy. Her mother was even dying, and did pass away while writing the third one. Jemisin even mentions this in the acknowledgement section to explain the difficulty in writing that book. So there's a saying I really love here. It's called art through adversity. It means that we as humans can make some of the best art during the hardest, darkest times in our life. And I believe it. I believe that the act of creating art gives us strength during our weakest moments. I think the real-world tragedy that Jemisin was going through has shaped this story in powerful ways. One of the major themes in the trilogy is motherhood. Esun's love for her daughter is at the heart of this story. There is real grief in these pages, real human emotion expressed within the text. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that this real-life tragedy happened for a reason to make the art better, because that's a very cruel thing to say. But I think that Jemisin was brave and strong enough to turn her tragedy into something beautiful, and that speaks incredibly well of her fortitude as a person and her skills as a writer. Yet, all that said, there are some weak points to the third book. So there are scenes that should have emotional weight, but were kind of skimmed over quickly. There were some plot lines that got dropped, and even some plot lines that got a bit rushed. So it's still a good ending, it still won the Hugo Award, and it's still one of the best books in existence. It's just unfortunately going to be compared to books 1 and 2, and it is a tiny little bit of a step down. How much should you try? Okay, easy question. At least try book 1. So the 5th season is a great novel. It's great from the start. It has all the best aspects of the trilogy, and the darkest parts too. So if you enjoy book 1 and you can handle the darkness, yes, you should continue on and read books 2 and 3 as well. Good luck and happy reading. Alright, that was my introduction to the Broken Earth trilogy. I hope you now know if you want to read it. Coming up next week is my deep dive into The Expanse, and I really hope you'll watch it because I wholeheartedly believe that The Expanse is the best science fiction series ever written, and it is tragically underrated. After that, we're doing a Hitchhiker's Guide and finishing off the month with Red Rising. So tell me your thoughts on the Broken Earth trilogy below. Please consider sharing this video if you want to convince someone to read it, or share any of my other videos. They're all not too bad. If you want to support our channel, we've got our shop, Rainbow Space Unicorn, for nerdy knickknacks and bookish Ita laptop bags. Take care of yourself today because you are worth taking care of. I'll see you next time, everyone. Love you all. Bye.